it's like the troll face or like Slender Man or something that we're all gonna die when he reveals his face.
Yeah, I can see that. There's also something about Shy Guy. I just look at him and I go, it feels racist. I don't know if I can explain why, but maybe it's the white mask. I don't know. I get bad vibes from Shy Guys. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Level 30 Games podcast. This is your episode for May 2025. My name's Tom, and I want to introduce our panel here today. Same folks that you've come to know and love. Joe, Drew, Dan, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Well, fantastic. We got a good show for you today. We got a couple news headlines to go through. We're going to talk about some of the least popular Nintendo characters that are officially the most unliked. We'll talk a little bit about the keycard controversy that has spurred a lot of conversation, debate, vitriol over the last couple weeks. We'll take a short dive into digital versus physical ownership of games. And our big headliner for today is taking a look with the cusp of Switch 2 on the horizon, launch lineups, and what we feel are some of the most historically great launch lineups in the history of video games. Guys, gaming's expensive. I don't know if you know this or not. Yeah, it's a bit problematic. Nintendo launched their console, was victim to lower the price in all of their streams over the next couple days, and people are still having a hard time swallowing the pill that is $80 for Mario Kart. However, Microsoft wanted to join the fun. They announced a couple weeks ago that their console prices are going up by $100 starting immediately, and that first-party games will also release at $80 in the fall. Now, this is also well after the fact that Sony put their console prices up higher in other parts of the world. There was no impact to the North American market. However, that is now rumored to be in the works as well. So it is very possible that your PS5s will cost more 6 years after they launched than they did on day one. And Drew, you've been in the hobby of not just playing video games, but also collecting video games and, you know, being an advocate for maintaining and preserving older systems, older relics. Price increases are not good for anybody, but what kind of impacts do you think that this makes for the industry, as well as people that just, you know, play games for fun?
So you and I both worked at a game store and sold them.
Yes, sir.
And and then Joe's in the tech world. It doesn't make sense that older equipment is going to be pricier for no reason. Like, okay, there might be issues globally with what's going on, but like, why is a 5-year-old system all of a sudden $50 more for the exact same thing? Like, there are plenty of them out there. They're just going to sit on shelves even longer than they already have.
Right, which in theory you would think would diminish the value, right? Because as tech ages.
It's like you buy a car, as soon as you drive it off the lot, it loses value. Why is it all of a sudden that a video game system that has been sitting on shelves appreciates in value? I understand rare games that, like when we were working for Game Crazy, selling games that didn't have a lot of quantity when it came to production line. Like right now, a month ago, Claire Obscure came out, and there are like no copies for PS5, and is selling for, instead of $50, is selling for $70 to $90, depending on what website you work on. I just am bothered by the fact that games nowadays don't ever go on sale anyway. So like, you're making a first party game an $80 game, and it's going to sit on shelves for $80. Where is there like, this game isn't selling, let me discount it? Like, it's so much harder now in 2025 to buy games on discount, and then you're not buying consoles on discount unless, I guess, they're refurbished or used, right? And even then, like, you have to hope and pray that whoever the prior owner was didn't mess up the insides or toast it when it came to like an Xbox 360 with the red ring of death.
Oh, you're rolling the dice on that.
So it bothers me. I understand the first party games going up. The consoles going up doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and it does sting a little extra more when it's an $80 game and it goes on sale and the sale price is like $64.99, and you're like, well, okay, it's still a ton of money. Dan, I'll go the other end of the spectrum because I feel like you are a little bit more particular in the games that you purchase and play. So where does this impact you in regards to maybe someone who makes fewer purchases overall? Does it sting as much or?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think there is like sticker shock in general, but I would argue that video game manufacturers, like over the last couple decades, have exhibited a pretty honest attempt at reducing cost when possible. Like every time there's a new system launch, there's always the debate around how much will people, sure, it's a high-tech computer, but how much will people actually pay for this, $600 PS5? Let's bring it down. So I feel like there's a history of the companies having integrity with trying to reduce cost more so than other industries where you see price gouging for price gouging. I feel like Nintendo has a pretty decent track record of trying to say, let's bring down the cost to not only be competitive, but just like a reasonable second household console or whatever. So it doesn't upset me in the way that I see it upsetting Drew, and I understand why people might have like a personal rejection of it. It doesn't offend me in that way, but I do think logistically, if you're getting a console at $400, most people will be reticent to get one game instead of two. If it was $40 or $50 a game or 50, 60, I could see people going, hey, let's throw in that extra game at launch. But now it's like, I'm not spending $700 on a Nintendo Switch and 2 games. I'll spend $600 and call it a day.
True. And then there's people like me with the sunken cost fallacy that's saying, oh, I'm spending $600, so why not just spend $700? And I can say as a collector, I'm being much more selective with what I purchase as well, because sometimes I'll pick up a game for $20, $30 and go, it's going to sit on my shelf for a long time, possibly ever. And you kind of make peace of that when you buy that. Now, I don't think that you have the luxury of doing that. Joe, from the tech side of things, why is it that we're not seeing a reduction in console prices as the years go on? It was always, hey, here's a revision. We're PS3 Slim, and we're knocking $50 off the price tag. Or the Nintendo 64's out, so we're dropping the Super Nintendo to $100, basically maybe to clear inventory. Why don't we see stuff like that anymore? Is there something in the tech realm that you can shed some light on?
So there are many different reasons, and I feel like it leans more into economics than the tech side of it overall. But realistically, like the number one reason, to me at least, for prices not changing or not being realistic is you're gonna buy it. Like where for a lot of stuff we're out of the point where we rely on supply and demand and arguably free market. Like the stuff is out there and people want to buy it, and if you want it for long enough or want it hard enough, like people are gonna pay the price. I mean, somebody at work the other day was telling me that he might sell his PS5 so that he can afford the scalper's price on, I think, the GTA PS5. And then he was like, I might just give my PS5 to one of my friends, not ask him for money, and then still buy the super expensive version. And I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you willingly spend that kind of money? But yeah, if people want things bad enough and they can afford it, they'll drop the money on it. That said, it's not uncommon, and this is going without any current research because I'm on a podcast right now. A lot of times consoles are sold at a loss, or at least like at cost. So there's not really a lot of wiggle room to lower the cost in 1, 2, 3, 4 years, because that price will get cheaper, but that just means they're only starting to make profit on it. So when things like tariffs happen, or chip shortages and stuff like that, when there's any sort of constraints on the supply chain, they have to increase costs because they planned to break even on this console, or sell it at cost or a little below, and then suddenly you take a big chunk out of that, and it's no longer even feasible to make the console for too long. The plan is to make the money back on the install base and on the games and accessories and stuff like that. But now, if you're losing even more money on the consoles themselves than just breaking even, you've got to either up the price of the consoles to make up for that and bring it back to zero, or up the price of all the games and accessories to kind of fill in that cost instead. It's a little bit of capitalism of, you're going to buy it anyway. And it's a little bit of, there were plans to sell this with a certain marketing strategy, and that marketing strategy doesn't always last in our political climate, I guess.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I guess when you look at it a little bit more logically, we paid this much for these parts to build this machine, and it's been 5 years, so those parts are old, which means they're less expensive. I guess companies are not saying, hey, we've made enough profit, let's lower the price and
never
get more people on board at all anymore. And I wouldn't be surprised if we go back to, like the early to mid 90s realm of just variable game pricing. You see it from time to time on social media or, like retro sites. Like, look at this Toys R Us ad from 1995. And there are Super Nintendo games that cost, $90. And then there's some that cost $45 or $42.99. So if you want Killer Instinct Gold, you're going to pay that premium for it, I guess. But if you want something like Tetris 2, I think it lended itself to saying, hey, at $90, this is what I'm in for. And at $45, maybe it just kind of changes the expectations as well. It seems that's what Nintendo's doing with Mario Kart at $80. You're going to enjoy this game for 5 years, 6 years. It's worth $80. You'll get your $80 worth. Whereas Donkey Kong Bonanza might be a little bit more singularly focused, single player game that, 10, 15 hour campaign and then you're done, is priced a little bit lower. I think maybe we start to see some of that as games get bigger and bigger, or the bubble's going to burst and eventually we either succumb to paying $80 to $100 per game, or companies start to say that we need to find a market for this. Is going to be a $50 price tag. We're not going to dump as many resources into this title as, say, we would, I don't know, Final Fantasy Remake. All right, next bit of news. May 12th, 2005 was when the Xbox 360 debuted. So we're celebrating its 20th anniversary, which is, I guess, a big milestone for a system that many of us had in our homes and is near and dear to our heart for one way or another. Drew, that's when you and I were in the retail end of the biz and were there for that launch and all the chaos that came after with the Red Rings of Death. But was there anything, and we'll just kind of open it up to the panel, that this generation of consoles kind of brought to the forefront that we look at now as kind of actually being rather significant or monumental?
I would submit that some of the games that were my favorite were sort of bigger, open, more intense, and more fun than video games I had experienced in the past. And I remember one of the first games playing on Xbox 360 was it Dead Rising?
Okay.
Or Dead or Alive. I actually can't remember what the correct title was, but you're in a shopping mall and there was
Dead Rising.
Dead Rising, right? You were sort of in an endless amount of items you could use to combat zombies, and I just remember that sort of feeling like an open world, or maybe in retrospect might have been a predecessor to a big open world sort of interactive. So I just thought like the worlds got massive in Xbox 360.
Yeah, I can add to
Drew,
it.
how about you?
With like Fallout series, like there was all this hype around this giant open world of Washington D.C. post-apocalypse, and that was the first system that I had that had online, right? Like PS2 kind of had it.
It did, kind of.
With
So
like
did GameCube
Fantasy
technically.
Star Online and things like that, but like I never really was implemented. And like when you and I were working at the game store, like we had so many customers that were our friends online. So like there was always a chance to play something online, whatever it was.
Right.
So this was like, I want to say like the peak of gaming, I want to say, of my career, because everything before that was kind of solo playing and like enjoying the worlds that were built in RPGs and games and like crafting myself, like the nostalgia factor. And then Xbox 360 added that social factor that I didn't have prior. So games that I might not have enjoyed as a kid just resonated even more because I now had like all the time that we played Halo 3 or Battlefield or Gears or whatever the game may be, just added even more memories to that console.
Yeah, that social component for me was a big one. I think the original Xbox, while it did have online, didn't really get fully fleshed out until the 360 with Xbox Live. Real quick then, quick fire.
Yeah.
Shoot from the hip if you have to. Favorite Xbox 360 game?
Borderlands. If that wasn't.
No surprises
Yeah,
there.
exactly. I really did love that game though. It was, and it's a little bit of nostalgia factor, but I think it's such an excellent game that really got me into like first person shooters and stuff.
Drew, real quick, favorite 360 game?
I'm going to go with Dark Souls because it bridged the gap between my childhood of like games are hard and you have to learn how to do things.
And now games are even harder.
And like when you beat a boss, it just was very satisfying. And then I've played every game ever since.
Dan, favorite 360
Fable,
game?
Fable 2.
Fable 2.
Damn, he was ready.
He was ready to go. Why?
I remember that sort of your impactability on the storyline, the physical appearance of the character for me was like pretty revolutionary. Your decisions would impact like how the missions that were available, and I know that was starting to come out in other games, but for me with the fantasy matchup and it was just I would still replay it happily.
That's also the game where you can walk up to an NPC and fart at them, right?
Yeah, and that affects their like their like recorded dialogue to you, and they will remember that later in the game. Like they like you or dislike you based off of your interactions and like your appearance and your, it's just fascinating to play with. So fun.
Yeah, cool. So I went with Halo 3 as some of the maps there for multiplayer were some of my favorite of all time. Drew, I remember playing hours multiplayer online with you to the point where we can, as the match would start, we knew exactly where to go, where to move, where to throw our first plasma grenade so that it would stick the opposing team member as they rounded the corner. I know I got into that in a really hardcore way. And I love the campaign as well. Probably the last good Halo campaign, truthfully.
Nothing more satisfying than sticking a grenade.
Happy birthday. Oh, it feels so good. Plasma grenade right in the face. You don't mind getting killed first when you blow them up seconds after. You get that From Beyond little moniker there. But yeah, happy birthday, Xbox. You can drink. You can drink next year. So couple.
Can they? I think they're dead.
Yeah, they got red ringed at 3 months old. So.
No, the new console I'm talking about. There's not going to be a new console.
A new Xbox?
Xbox is dead on the consoles.
I mean, yeah, if raising your prices $100 isn't the nail in the coffin to a system that didn't sell very well, I don't know what is. So 2 quick discussion points before we get to our headliner. This was more of, let's start with the serious one and then we'll get with the fun one. There's been a small controversy over the Switch 2 and their implementation of game keycards, which are effectively games that you purchase at retail with a pseudo-empty cartridge on it that acts as your key to basically allow you to download the game and then to play the game. So there is no game information stored on the actual key card itself. It is just a license key. And that has rubbed some people the wrong way, especially those that like physical collection and want to make sure that their games are playable long after this system is passed and some of the online servers for things have gone down. Do any of you see this as a big issue for you personally? I'm just kind of curious. As someone who collects physical, I'm not really thrilled about this, but I also can't bring myself to go full digital. So, what do you guys think about this as a option for those looking to kind of like maybe try and get the best of both worlds, physical and digital?
I mean, personally, I'm physical all the way, unless the game is under, I don't know, $15. And then I have always been the type of person where I will play a game, and then when I'm really done with it, I will either give it to somebody else that I think would really enjoy it, or take a bunch in and just drop them off at a GameStop or something like that. But I think that without that physical copy, to say, hey, Drew, I think you'd really like it, and sort of we have a financial advantage to being friends of the same hobby, where I can share my Metroid Dread copy with you when I'm done, is like part of the appeal, where
Well,
you take it away. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
You would be able to do that. You would be able to take that game key card and give it to Drew. He would just then have to download the full game, and you still would not be able to play it on your system unless you had that key card. So in effect, it's very similar, but the fact that there's no game data on the card, I think, is where the problem lies.
Right. And you're still dealing with the storage on your space, and you're gonna have to navigate that eventually. I just feel like it's easier to have a cartridge with the memory on there, keep it clean. Just yeah.
Drew, is this going to deter you from physical collecting?
I'm the one. You guys are both physical, Dan and Tom. I'm not sure about Joe, but I'm the person who's on the in between. Like, I have way too many games on Steam, right? I have way too many physical games on any system, but I also have a lot of physical ones. Like Dan said, anything under like $20, $15, like, sure, like, I'll download it. My problem though is, like, years from now, when I get like when Switch 3 comes out or whatever Nintendo does afterwards, right? There's that talk of how many of these games are going to be hosted on Nintendo's servers, and when do they get taken down? When is your physical key card going to expire that they don't have the data for that game anymore?
Right.
So it's troubling because I like to collect physical games, and as Dan stated, I love lending out. Like, my friend Paul, he doesn't buy a lot of games, but when I refer him, like, I give him a physical copy and he's like, thanks, and then he'll loan it back to me. I'm okay with the key card doing that. I think, like, at the end of the life cycle, if Nintendo's stating, they should find a way. If they're stating, like, this game no longer exists, download it to the key card. I think that would be a cool feature. Like,
that would be cool.
It had the capability to hold it. It's 64 gigabytes. All of those games can be on there. Why? It's just.
Well, because probably none of those key cards have write ability. It's probably they're all read only, I'm sure. I don't know if there's a way to change that. Maybe Joe would know. Joe would also be the person to get physical if there's a $700 Borderlands 4 Collector's Edition. That's what he would probably get. I'm sure there will be. I think there was like a $300 one. Was there not, Joe?
For 3, yeah, there were 2 also had it, but it wasn't quite as expensive. But yeah, there was the loot chest versions,
right,
that came with a bunch of bonus gear. That's saying that those carts are read only is ignoring the fact that they're created by Nintendo. So if they want to produce them initially with the ability to write, then they can do that. So the card, they might be making them read only, and that might cost us the ability to write the games to the cart later. But realistically, that is a restriction that Nintendo set in place anyway.
Yeah, and so in kind of digging into this just a little bit, apparently due to the speeds of the card, because this time around with the external option for memory, Nintendo is saying that they're only supporting microSD Express, which is a faster type of SD card, that the cartridges are also Express and therefore not available in any capacity under 64 gigabytes, which is why a lot of the companies that have a game that fits under that is not really willing to pay for a large cartridge when they don't need all the space. It's been reported that it costs the publisher $16 a cartridge to use it and put their game on it. So if you have to factor that into your game price, that's not nothing. That's a large chunk of money. So if you have a 10 gigabyte game and you got to pay $16 to put it on a cart, I get why they're shifting in that direction. I'm just not super thrilled that the games that I buy that are key cards don't actually have data on them for the game. So
Do
I
you
don't know.
think Limited Run will still create cartridges for Switch 2?
So Limited Run, I believe, said officially that they're, and I'm not entirely sure of the difference. If someone knows, chime in. That I guess they have a catalog that they number releases for, and that if it's a numbered release, that the entire game will be on the cart. But I guess if it's a reprint or an offshoot or something that would not put it in their official catalog, and it's not a numbered game, that it may not necessarily. Moving on, it is now factually proven who the least liked Nintendo character is in the Mushroom Kingdom. Now, Drew has contention with this because he doesn't believe it to be the case. But this is based on actual canon published by Nintendo. If you go to the website playnintendo.com, which is run by Nintendo, there is a list of 117 characters that they say dwell within the Mushroom Kingdom. Fun fact, I had to scroll all the way to the bottom, and the last set of characters is from the game ARMS. So there's 117 characters, and if you click on some of them, it will actually tell you who they're friends with and who they associate with. The least liked Nintendo character is Monty Mole. Monty Mole lists himself as being friends with 20 people, and not a single one of those 20 people list Monty Mole as a friend in exchange. So yeah, he kind of gets a bad rap in the Mushroom Kingdom, and I thought this was actually kind of funny, and because it is Nintendo canon, I guess they can arguably, I don't know, play into this in some way, shape, or form. Do you guys have a most hated Nintendo character? Someone that you just look at their face and want to punch it?
I honestly can't stand Kamek or Kamek, whatever it is.
I don't even know how to pronounce his name. You're right.
The assistant to Bowser. Like, every time it shows up in a Super Mario game, I'm just like, what the hell is going on now?
That's a good. That's a good pick. He is kind of obnoxious in that sense, especially because he usually triggers some really stupid animation where he's like, dropping magic on the screen, and it just takes too long, so I kind of get annoyed with it. So I don't know. Dan, you have one?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a hated character. I wouldn't actually say I have an opinion about this character at all, but I would say a lot of people really seemingly love like a wild card character, and I don't get why.
Oh, the former wild card loving a wild card character?
So I could see why people would hate Monty Mole, even though I have no personal, he's the least annoying character to me. But I would say I'm also very perplexed why so many people love Shy Guy.
Oh, I think we just
See?
broke up, Dan.
See?
Oh no!
I don't get it. I don't get it.
Explain your love, Drew.
It's like the mystery, like, what's behind the mask? I don't want to see it, honestly, because, when Meta Knight revealed his mask and he's a blue Kirby, it was, amazing. When Shy Guy reveals his from whatever's behind his mask, I'm pretty sure it's, the troll face or, Slender Man or something that we're all going to die when he reveals his face.
Yeah, I can see that. There's also something about Shy Guy. I just look at him and I go, it feels racist. I don't know if I can explain why, but maybe it's the white mask. I don't know. I get bad vibes from Shy Guy. So I'm not particularly fond of him either, but I kind of do like him. Not to the same affinity that Drew does, but I would have to probably go with a common one, and that would be, having replayed Wind Waker, Tingle really is kind of the most annoying thing on the planet.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I hate to be a little cliche with that, but dude, just why are you making me hunt for Triforce shards? He has his own game, but he's kind of annoying. I would also say my runner-up would be any of the baby characters. I don't know why we need them. Yoshi's Island was a great game, but as soon as that baby starts crying,
Yeah.
You kill a really good soundtrack there.
I love that game. Yeah, the soundtrack is fire.
Soundtrack, right? Until there's a baby wailing, and you want it to go away forever. I'm not saying kill the baby, but sometimes you got to kill the baby.
Not saying kill the baby.
No, there you go. Joe is favorable for baby killing. I think we can say.
You know
that.
what? I won't argue on that.
Probably should.
Stop the conversation.
Probably should.
Nobody wants to relate themselves to that.
Nintendo's
No.
also listing Cappy from Odyssey as part of the Mushroom Kingdom, which I would argue is a big stretch. But also, it's just a hat. It's a hat with a ghost body. That the hat has eyes. It's very an odd animation of a. Like you can't take the hat off because its eyes are on the outside of the hat. So what's underneath? And it's just a hat.
Yeah, but Cappy can also go into other things, right? So like
Totally. Yeah. No, I get it. I'm just.
No,
I'm Tingle's also not from the Mushroom Kingdom. Just a heads up.
Well, I guess that's technically true, but I don't know. What do you want me to pick? Professor Chops? What the hell? Who the hell is that?
Exactly.
That's a great question.
He's from
Joe,
Donkey
who's your
Kong?
pick?
See, I don't
Wait.
even know.
Oh, this is just characters in general. Because Tingle is on here.
How about Kracko from Kirby?
I got nothing against
Yeah, but-
Kracko.
You just fight him. Like,
Yeah, whatever. He's
shows
just a
up.
cloud with an
Tinkle's
eyeball,
listed
right?
here, Dan. Tinkle's listed with being friends with Link, Zelda, Tetra, which, spoiler alert, Ganondorf, but not Ganon, interestingly enough. Sheik
Yeah, but
is
he
friends with
said
Epona
Mushroom
and the
Kingdom.
Gorons. Interesting.
I do like this is getting off topic, but I like the canon that in Mario Odyssey you don't play as Mario, you play as Cappy.
Oh.
And like the first time I read that I was like, oh yeah, I feel kind of stupid. That does make sense, doesn't it?
Well, it's the same logic where in Mario versus Rabbids or Mario and Rabbids, you don't really play as any of them. You play as the little Roomba that guides them around. So, are we applying the same
Well-
logic there?
yes, we
Oh.
are.
I got another one then. Sorry, Joe.
Go for it.
This is also an unpopular opinion. The chat dialogue in the latest Animal Crossing games and all the Animal Crossing, like I know Tom Nook is a beloved character, but the way their voice sounded drove me insane. I actually couldn't play it because of it.
I can see that. I can see that. You
Just
should,
talking about like annoyance during the gameplay, that actually got to me.
fair enough. So you basically hate all the Animal Crossing villagers.
Yes.
He wants to live alone.
He wants to
Animal
live on an
hater.
island and not be burdened by debt, which is really one of the selling points of being on an island. Is that you would think you don't owe anybody a ton of money,
nice.
and here comes this Tanuki where all of a sudden you own a house and owe him several $100,000 of a made-up currency. Yeah, there's some interesting things there. Play Nintendo, you can see the whole list of characters. It's very hard to hate any one of them. I mean, Quibi's on here, and he's basically a block. He's a
mean,
square.
Originally, when you stated this, I always disliked Birdo in the earlier games. But then when you could play as it for, like, Mario Party, it's like, okay, it's not a hated person. I just disliked you when you were my villain. Now you're kind of a friend.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. Birdo on the website here has like a giant, what I can only presume is engagement ring on their finger. And I'm wondering if they're married to Yoshi. Is that?
No, I remember seeing this somewhere. Is married to something, but I forget what it is.
There was another version of Birdo. I think it was the green one that spit fire. I think that was technically a different character.
I don't know.
In the Nintendo World franchise, Birdo is married to Yoshi. They have a half Yoshi,
Oh.
half Birdo baby.
There you go. All right. See, we learned something new. And I believe it was one of the trivia questions I asked on a previous episode forever ago. I think Birdo is also canonically a transgendered character.
Yes. Birdo is considered to be one of the first transgender characters in video games.
There you go.
Like, the whole Nintendo universe just blew up. where do they announce
Single-handedly-
these things? I looked it up.
And you know what? You know who's protesting this? Shy Guys. So what does that tell you?
No, Monty Mole is. Monty Mole is.
No, Monty Mole is trying to be friends with everyone, and no one likes him. It's such a
The
sad
first
thing.
iteration of Birdo with a ring was Mario Golf.
Okay, well,
like-
I'm just on their website. That's the image that pops up is just a big old rock. And man, I don't know where Yoshi makes his money, but you know what? He's selling eggs, and egg prices have gone up. So Yoshi's actually doing quite well. This makes total sense now, guys. I think we just solved it.
Can you imagine just selling your own eggs for food? Like,
But don't those eggs hatch into more Yoshis? So aren't we then
Yeah. Birdos.
pushed into like human trafficking? You sound like Yoshi parts.
yeah, come to think of it, Yoshi reproduces asexually. Like, Yoshi drops already fertilized eggs.
Yoshi's just basically a hen.
So wait, is this where the Yoshi burgers come into play as well?
Yoshi's just giving birth and then cooking.
Cannibal.
It's like a hamster.
This is a deep dark hole that Nintendo's going down.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, you know what? I like that we made sense of it all. We just figured out so many things. I love it. Oh boy.
And
Well,
yet I
thanks.
have more questions than ever before.
Oh, there are so many questions raised. But we have the hatred of Monty Mole to thank for bringing this all to light. It's a big distraction. It's a cover-up, if you will. So I don't know how to transition from that. But let's get into our headliner for the day, the launch lineup jamboree. Let's lay out how this works, and we're going to go chronologically here. So, Joe, take a second to prepare yourself. But we're on the cusp of the Switch 2 launch. It's actually a mere couple weeks away. I'm very excited, looking forward to getting my hands on with Mario Kart, possibly one additional game. Launch lineup is not amazing, as there are a lot of ports of other systems, but of course we got Mario Kart World, Welcome Tour, Split Fiction is getting ported over, Cyberpunk is getting ported over, Street Fighter, Civ 7, Hogwarts Legacy, Bravely Default, Yakuza 0, all on key cards, by the way, Rune Factory, Guardians of Azuma, Puyo Puyo Tetris 2S, Hitman World of Assassination, Kinitsugami Path of the Goddess. Those are all your launch titles, minus some smaller indie titles. But how do you guys feel about this generally for day one? Is this enough? I was looking at, okay, Mario Kart is the given, but like if I wanted to pick up a second Switch game, I kind of don't really maybe know if there's anything here that catches my eye in a meaningful way. Do you guys, how do you feel about the lineup? Joe?
First, I'd like to congratulate you on saying Bravely Default and not Braverly Default, because there's an old episode where you kept saying that and then eventually stopped correcting yourself. Now,
Well, I was going to reply snarkily. Well, I'm running a podcast. I should know how to articulate. But I've listened to myself in an edit and gone, what the am I saying? This is awful. So thank you for throwing me under the bus there.
anytime. That's what I'm here for. I think we actually, to be honest, I think we talked about this on a prior episode about the launch title lineup, and I kind of feel the same. Like, yeah, Mario Kart's there, but I don't know what I'd pick as another game to go along with it. Nothing really seems to grab me. Like, none of the games particularly look bad. Like, none of them look like I would definitely not play that. But nothing, there's no standouts for me other than Mario Kart.
All right, so maybe not a
more
second
Kirby.
game. Joe or Dan, do you guys have a second game that
I already
you're...
answered.
I'm sorry, Drew or Dan, do you guys have a second game on this list that you're eager to jump into once you played Mario Kart for an hour and feel kind of good about that and want to move on to something else?
Only thing up here I would probably purchase so I could have it on the go would be Street Fighter 6.
Okay. Dan, maybe some of these games are a little less... Well, you have an Xbox, but some of these games have been around for a while. Any of these jumping out to you?
Yeah, the only one I would try, I think, would be Civ 7. The reason why I would be curious to explore that mouse feature. I think if it is successful in that game, it could open the consideration. But if I try it and hate it, I will never use that feature for any other game or buy a game that could do that. So that would be the other I would consider.
Gotcha.
point.
Yeah. So Bravely Default might be my go-to. I'm also curious about Rune Factory, Guardians of Azuma. To Joe or Drew's comment moments ago, one of the things I wanted to visit was taking a look historically at some launch lineups of past consoles and how they fared, maybe compared to where we are today, as launch lineups in video games as a whole has the whole market industry has shifted a lot. And so I asked our panel, kind of first come first serve, to do a little bit of light research to pick a console that they felt had to them, to their opinion, the most impressive launch lineup ever. And they're here to share their choices with us today. And I don't know their talking points. I just know what they selected, so we can do it in order here. And Joe, I'm going to let you kick it off.
So I went with the Game Boy Advance. I have something to... Okay, so there were 15 games, in the US at least, there were 15 games that launched with the Game Boy Advance. And that is up from... No, not at all compared to the two previous Game Boys that launched, which had like 3 and 4. And, you know, one of them was Tetris, I think, for both. But listen to this lineup for what it is. For June 11th, 2001 is when the game and the console and these games dropped. We got Super Mario Advance, F-Zero Maximum Velocity, Army Men Advance, High Heat Baseball 02, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, Dodgeball Advance, Fire Pro Wrestling, Top Gear GT Championship, Tweety and the Magic Jewel, which I only saw on some lists, but Fortress, Iridian 3D, Pitfall, The Mayan Adventure, Ready to Rumble Boxing Round 2, Choo Choo Rocket, and Rayman Advance. I see we have a fan of Choo Choo Rocket, it looks like.
Oh, Choo Choo Rocket is awesome. Yeah.
The scores for Choo Choo Rocket were pretty great. If you've
never played it, it is one of the most fun video games I've ever played. Still.
Yeah, we're waiting for Sega to bring that back in a meaningful way. Could you imagine like 4-player online co-op, like on one board, just dropping arrows like that? That would be awesome.
I love the cover art. It's pretty. It doesn't describe anything about the game at all, but it's some fun art. But it's got a Metascore of 84 and a user score of 8.3, and you don't often see the scores so close like that. They're almost the same, really. So yeah, Choo Choo Rocket itself has great scores, but like most of the games, the launch titles for Game Boy Advance are in the 80s for their scores. Like there's only a couple that were kind of busts. There was it's also not on this list, but there's a Konami game, Konami Crazy Racers, which is a little lower at like I think it's like 78. So yeah, it had a great launch lineup. It also was kind of a big deal because it changed the form factor for Game Boys. You know, it made them more comfortable, realistically. Like, I go back and try and play games that are shaped like my phone now and the old Game Boys, and I'm still not a big person. My hands are still pretty small, but my hands cramp up in minutes trying to play old Game Boy games. It was a big change for like CPU architecture and stuff like that. And if I read the article I was looking at correctly, they tested every single Game Boy game to make sure it would run on Game Boy Advance. There was none of this like, hey, we're gonna emulate it, because you really couldn't emulate an entire system. Even an older one, you couldn't emulate an entire system on one of those old Game Boy Advance. I think they're ARM chips. So they tested every single Game Boy game to make sure it was backwards compatible, and say, like, if you got a Game Boy game or a Game Boy Color game, you can still pop it in this thing, and it's going to look a little silly sticking out the top, but otherwise, it's going to play, and we made sure of it. But that's my push for Game Boy Advance having the best launch. I could have done better, but I don't know. I didn't know what I was up against, but it had a great lineup. It had solid scores for almost all of the games. And it's a Game Boy. What else do you want?
All right, so for my selection, I went with the GameCube. I thought the GameCube had the strongest launch lineup. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13 titles available at launch. Run through the list. Run through the yes, but the quality of game here was really, really strong. Luigi's Mansion, Super Monkey Ball, Wave Race Blue Storm, All Star Baseball 2002, Batman Vengeance, Crazy Taxi, Dave Mirra Freestyle BMX 2, Disney's Tarzan, Madden NFL 2002, NHL Hits, Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2 Rogue Leader, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3. I also put an asterisk here and say within 2 weeks of launch, which was November 18th, 2021, December 3rd, you also had FIFA, SSX Tricky, Pikmin, and Super Smash Bros. Melee. So they came out within 2 weeks. It's not an official launch lineup, but I put the asterisk there because that's still pretty darn impressive. I mean, your strongest titles out of the gate, Luigi's Mansion, Wave Race, Super Monkey Ball. Luigi's Mansion was the birth of a new franchise. Wave Race was technically the death of a very short-lived franchise. Monkey Ball was also the birth of a new franchise, which was the first also Sega game published on a Nintendo console. That game has gone on to have 16 sequels and spin-offs. Rogue Squadron 2 is arguably one of the best Star Wars games ever made. Tony Hawk 3 was probably the peak of the original trilogy, and Crazy Taxi was an excellent Dreamcast arcade port. So you had a little bit of your racing games, you had sports games, you had action platformers. I will say that the biggest con here is that you're really lacking like that true killer app. There was no Mario title at launch. And there wasn't a huge single player game with like a meaningful or heavy campaign or story, anything like that. A lot of the games are more arcade oriented, action oriented, which is why I think Luigi's Mansion is kind of special because it wasn't quite an in-depth Mario game. It's very much its own thing. So I thought that like you weren't short of finding at least 2 or 3 games that you might want to pick up here to take home with you when you got the GameCube. And then you had Pikmin and Super Smash Brothers right around the corner. So yeah, that was my choice. I will pass it on to who's next, which is going to be Daniel's son.
I took the PS2, and I'm going to preface this with saying it could be an indicator for the Switch 2. So the titles themselves, we got Armored Car 2, Dead or Alive 2, Dynasty Warriors 2, ESPN International Track and Field, ESPN Xbox Games Snowboarding, Eternal Ring, Evergrace, Fantavision, Gun Griffin Blaze, Kessen, Madden 2001, Midnight Club, MotoGP, NHL 2001, Orphan, Cue Ball, Billboards, Ready to Rumble Boxing, Ridge Racer 5, Silent Scope, Smuggler's Run, SXX Tricky, Street Fighter EX3, Summoner, Swing Away, Tekken Tag Tournament, Time Splitters, Unreal Tournament, Wild Wing Racing, and X Squad. 26 titles in total. What was pretty prolific about the PS2 in general was that none of the launch games were in even the top 100 best-selling PS2 games of all time. So why I'm arguing that this was the best launch was because these games got it to being the best console system, where like pretty quickly most of the games died out of circulation. It sort of like bridged it, and then it was okay. We got the system. The top selling and most prolific games from PS2: Grand Theft Auto, Final Fantasy, and Metal Gear Solid. Anyone want to take a stab at the best-selling PS2 game all time? The games for launch were quite balanced, although quite honestly, they're very heavily racing and fighting games. There's actually 2 snowboarding games at launch. ESPN X Games Snowboarding and SSX Tricky. SSX Tricky was the highest rated Metacritic of the release games at 93. The second being Dead on Arrival at 91, which although was originally released on Dreamcast. So it was a launch title, but it wasn't specific to that game.
Hearing that list of games, I'm just already flashing back to having a friend who had this system, and there weren't a lot of games out, but like the options for like renting stuff. I remember vividly like, all right, we're going to figure out Midnight Club. Kessen was, I just got hit in the brain when you said that because that was an odd strategy. That was a weird one. There's some good stuff there.
Smuggler's Run and Midnight Club were both 2 Rockstar games, One was more racing in inner city, one was racing in the dunes, and they were both considered like sort of the predecessor to the big Grand Theft Auto explosion. The other thing that is super interesting about PS2 is it sold 9 million copies in the first 3 months. It sold 30 million copies in 2004 and 2005. So 4 or 5 years after it was released. And it sold 12 million copies the year after PS3 was launched. So it continued to like grow in its, I mean, like the top 100 Metacritic or top most highest selling games for PS2 weren't released in the first couple of years of its launch. So it had a considerably long run. So that's my case for PS2.
Very nice.
It also had games launched until the end of 2013.
Yeah, it was like FIFA was like one of the last games published on it or something.
The very last is Pro Evolution Soccer 2014 on
Okay.
November 13th, 2013.
There you go.
Still wild, though.
All right, Drew, bring it home for us. The final system that you're lobbying.
I panicked like Joe normally does.
Oh no, you switched up, didn't you?
No, because you guys picked, I probably would have went with Dan's. I do think that Joe's GBA is the best handheld launch, but I was torn between Xbox 360 and Wii, and Xbox 360's lineup was not very strong, so I went Wii, and it was mainly because of what Nintendo's doing again for the Switch 2. They're bundling a game with it. Well, possibly bundling, depending on which console you get. So, launch titles were Avatar: The Last Airbender, Call of Duty 3, Cars, Dragon Ball Z, Budokai Tenkaichi 2, Excite Truck, Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, GT Pro Series, Happy Feet, Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, Madden NFL 07, Marvel Ultimate Alliance, Monsters 4x4, World Circuit, Need for Speed Carbon, Rampage Total Destruction, Rayman Raven Rabbids, Red Steel, SpongeBob SquarePants, Super Monkey Ball, Tony Hawk's Downhill Jam, Trauma Center, Second Opinion, and Wii Sports, which was bundled with it. And that's the primary reason I went with it. Like when Dan talked about about backwards compatibility, right? We could play GameCube games. It actually had 4 ports for GameCube controllers, but in the long running of the console, I think if there was a timer for how many hours I spent playing Wii Sports, bowling, playing the new features, right? Like it got so many people out of their chairs to exercise and do other things besides just sitting there with a controller in your hand. I think the hype and everything that went behind the Wii was very methodically thought out by Nintendo, and I think they hit a home run with it. Not all the games, obviously. I'm sure the Metacritic scores for like first-person shooters on this console and just a lot of throwaway titles like who was buying Happy Feet, unless you were like a 3-year-old kid watching the movie. But overall, like the length of that console and what transpired afterwards with certain games, I just enjoyed. The other thing I wanted to throw in there was it was the first time you actually got to play Legend of Zelda and actually like swing a sword as opposed to, again, using a controller. So like I think that added a whole new dimension that you didn't get in prior iterations.
You get to waggle.
Waggle, waggle.
Waggle. Oh, I waggled all right. I picked up that and Red Steel. Red Steel was a waggle game. That thing never worked right.
Oh, the Trauma Center was cool too, right?
Trauma
like,
Center was
you literally cutting open a chest and like suturing, like
Yeah.
So
I do remember with Skyward Sword though, like in the beginning of the game, I was like really going for it with like the stick and the Wii thing up, and then by the end you're just like a gentle tilt off, and you're like, yeah, okay.
You're on the couch. It's like, doesn't matter.
that was after you threw the Wiimote multiple times at the TV, and you're like, I guess I can't be excited about this.
Yeah. Well, it'd be hard pressed. I'm wondering if we all, and not right now because we're pressed for time, but saying like, all right, if we had to agree on one, it would be really tough to collectively say, okay, we think this is the best one yet. So if you're listening and you got a voice in the matter, let us know what you think yours is personally. If you agree with us, if you disagree with us, all good. I just thought it was interesting to take a look back, and as many of us have been through many game launches in our day, I was actually kind of surprised retroactively how many systems I got at launch. With the Switch 2 on the horizon, it was kind of interesting to look back and go, yeah, maybe the offerings this time around aren't great, but have they ever been great? And
Yeah.
we got four good examples of, hey, these launch lineups are pretty stellar. I think the one thing that we don't see a lot of now at all is the licensed titles, and that just kind of is its own thing. Actually, that's a segment idea for another day. Joe's got some trivia for us.
I do. I actually wrote the questions this time.
Oh my God!
It
Now
was
we're
me,
gonna
and
have to move a little quick through this as I'm eyeing the time here.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I did this specifically so that I didn't have to participate.
There you go.
'Cause it's really just two people if I'm participating. All right. So the theme for our questions is
Ooh, we got a theme.
arcade. Yeah, arcade games.
Oh no!
Yep. And not Nintendo arcade games, just arcade games in general. But the first question is Nintendo related.
Round 1.
What character can be played in all 3 Mario Kart arcade games? There's technically 4 Mario Kart arcade games. We're excluding Mario Kart VR because it didn't really get a wide launch. So there's one character that can be played in all 3 Mario Kart arcade games, but not in any, as far as I could find, not in any of the console versions.
It's either going to be something silly like a Mii, or it's going to be something totally out of left field like Samus.
I have
Nintendo
absolutely no idea, but I do know I've only played one of the arcade games, and it does allow you to take your picture at the start of the game. I don't know if that maps to a character or it's just the icon on the racer. I would have no idea. I'm going to go with Spike. I don't know why.
Yes.
Okay. Any other one? Anyone else want to throw a guess?
Is it in the Mushroom universe?
No.
Mushroom Kingdom?
No.
Yeah, I'm going Samus.
Drew, did you want to throw?
Monty Mole.
Oh,
Monty Mole?
All 3 of you are wrong. The one character that you can play in the 3 Mario Kart arcade games, but not in any of the console games, is Pac-Man.
Oh wait, is Namco the producer or the publisher?
they might have had a hand in it. I think they did the arcade games. Yeah.
They might have, yeah. There was a split. There's some that are made by Nintendo, some that are made not by Nintendo but have Nintendo games. There's a lot of Namco characters in Nintendo's arcade games. But you can play as Ms. Pac-Man in the first 2, and you can also play as Blinky in the first 2, but only Pac-Man remains in the third one.
Wow. Okay. Good question.
Round 2.
All right, next question. There are 5 total questions and a bonus. So what was I feel like this one should be obvious to everyone, but what was the name of the arcade game of Urban Legend that caused mental anguish and was often removed from arcades by Men in Black?
So it's not a fighter.
I wouldn't think so.
Really? I thought this was more obvious. There was part of the legend is that it was used for like some sort of like government screening, and they would take notes on people who played the game and like got high scores before they eventually pulled it from the arcade.
That leads me towards like Silent Scope.
Silent Scope was what came to mind for me too.
No, it's not that.
Monster Truck Racing. I don't know.
It's not like. It's not like a Galaga type game.
It's
If you
not
can ask
like
hints, then it defeats
Whoa.
the purpose.
I know
It's-
this, but I'm not gonna get it.
because it's from Urban Legend. It is a very old arcade game.
It was to train people, right? And
Missile
then
Command?
It was not
don't
Missile
know.
Command.
All right,
That's
my
that.
guess.
The legend said it was for training people, but again, it
Yeah.
was in just bars and arcades and stuff like that. It wasn't in like any
Tapper.
training.
Golden Tee.
What's that?
No,
Golden
Tapper
Tee.
still exists. Golden Tee still exists.
Okay, we don't know it. We have to move on.
Okay, the answer is Polybius.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, I have. heard of
Really?
that.
Oh my god. Okay, look into it. It's not the game. There is a real version of Polybius now, but the game itself never actually existed. It was legitimately
Oh.
just an urban legend. They said people would play the game, they would have seizures, they would have nightmares, anxiety, and stuff like that. And then the government would like look into people that got the high scores, and then after a couple of weeks, they would remove it from the arcade, and you'd never see it again.
Nope. Never
Or
heard
that
legend
person with the
before.
high score.
Or exactly, they did say some people disappeared as well after playing the game.
Yes, I remember
the-
hearing about this game.
The bonus question tack onto this one was, who or what was the actual Polybius? Like, where did the name come from?
It's like a Greek god or something.
You were close. It's a Greek historian.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Round 3.
Okay. What company released the first video arcade game with a steering wheel?
Was it? No, what was the monster truck?
And
Was
Off-road?
it that? Off-
there's a bonus tack onto this which is what was the name of that game?
something truck. Was it off road? Is that the one I'm thinking of?
Each truck driver's a different color, and it's like the,
Yeah.
I love that game.
That would be a solid wager for me.
That's
I
with
tried
the four little steering wheels, right?
Yeah.
I love that game.
And you would turn them into this car would like skid, and you'd have
Yeah,
Yeah, I love that game.
that game's awesome.
I'm trying to think of the game that came out prior to that. I feel like it would have to be, but I don't know any. Oh, Outrun? No. When did Outrun come out? Outrun was
No, that was like
that'd be
PS2.
after. That was a Sega game.
We're talking the very first one in arcades that had a steering wheel.
it's not Daytona or Cruisin', right?
No, those are too old.
those are later.
Yeah.
Were
Good
they?
games though.
Oh,
Spy Hunter was an old NES game.
I don't think that ever came out in arcade, did it?
Yeah.
I give up. I don't know. I'm gonna go with monster truck or whatever that off road.
I'm gonna go with
4x4.
I'm gonna go with Spy Hunter.
So the game itself was Grand Track 10, and it was released by Atari.
Okay. My Atari
Okay.
knowledge is very limited.
That's okay. It was
Oh,
weird.
yeah,
I
like that.
didn't even know that Atari created arcade games, to be completely honest. So until I started doing the trivia. So
Round 4.
in 1981, Atari released the video game Tempest, designed by David Thurer, I believe it's pronounced. According to Thurer, where did the concept of the game come from? And I'll give you options. A, his nightmares. B, a drug trip. C, his imagination. D, a cartoon. Or E, stolen from a coworker.
I'm gonna go with the drug trip.
I'll take nightmare. I'm just guessing.
Drew.
Don't we
See,
have to
those are
agree on this?
my two that I was going to. So I'm gonna say his coworker.
The answer is A, his nightmares. Yeah, Tempest was supposed to be like a first-person version of Space Invaders, and then
Okay.
yeah, super interesting considering the fact that there's not a whole lot of graphics to the game to begin with. But it ended up being I think they kind of scrapped that idea, but it still kind of looks like it. But yeah, the goal of the way it looked was his nightmares. He had a nightmare and tried to turn that into a game.
Round 5.
And for the final question now, what
We all
video
lost, but
I'm so proud of myself. What video arcade game released in 1978 was so popular in Japan that it sparked a myth that there was a shortage of 100 yen coins?
what was the year?
1978.
78. That's what's throwing me.
I mean, if you're taking Pac-Man, which makes sense, right? Like, people trying to just dump quarters
Yeah.
in, but at the same time, like, I don't know.
I
What
was
game
like-
would you be like throwing quarters or 100 yen coins in constantly.
Pachinko, but that's not really.
Yeah. Like, I would want to say Tetris, but at the same time, I'm not pumping a ton of quarters into that console.
Dr.
Galaga.
Mario.
It was mentioned. The game was mentioned today on this podcast. But I won't say whether it was a minute ago or an hour ago, but it was mentioned today.
Oh God.
Tapper.
Tapper?
I don't think Tapper would have been big in. I mean, it might have been big in Japan.
I could see like yeah. I could see Donkey Kong. I could see Pac-Man.
Dan,
I can
break the
still
tie.
see Tetris.
Donkey Kong or Pac-Man?
I'm going Donkey Kong.
I'm
All right,
still saying
that'll
Tetris.
be your final answer, Donkey Kong.
Doesn't matter, it was neither. The answer is Space Invaders.
Oh, who mentioned Space Invaders?
We talked about it like a minute ago when I said Tempest was a 3D, a first-person version of Space Invaders.
He mentioned it, not we.
I just said it was mentioned on the podcast, that's all.
Lame sauce.
tricky.
All right, 1 out of 5. We got one right.
Oh, Lord.
20%. Not doing
I'll,
so
Dan,
well.
Dan got one right.
Dan got the one right. Well, that's very fitting because Dan is the next host of Trivia, so you'll have to tune in next month because that is all the time that we have today. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening. Thanks for doing some throwback with some of our older system launches, taking a look at the headlines, and then getting walloped by Joe's Trivia. Very good job across the board. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you everyone at home for watching and or listening. Make sure you pass this along to your friends. Our last episode did really good numbers. We want to see them go up. So spread the good Level 30 Games word, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.